All right, welcome to the live show. We're live. I think at this point I understand how the technology works, and I can confidently say that we are live. So the Raptors beat the Pacers 107-102. Louis Zatzman is here to dissect the greatest game OG Anunoby has ever played in his life, and this game also means that he is on a trajectory to be a superstar because he
He's
has
back.
all the offensive moves required to be a superstar. We already know he had the defense. At this point, Lewis, the only question really is, should we just firmly take over all our expectations of Siakam and dump it onto OG? Go.
Yeah, I don't think there's any such thing as nuance, right? It's got to be one or the other. It's either they're on the path or they're not. No, man, it's incredible. Like, this was the Raptors last year. You know, guys were out, guys stepped up into bigger roles, and that's what happened. I mean, Norm was amazing he scored 20. OG Anunoby was like, he did what Toronto needs from a tier one superstar tonight. He did it without Kyle, without Pascal. Like, man, that was so much fun.
And well, we'll get that whole stuff. But OG on his own, man, and I have a habit of watching the other team's feed. And it was the Indiana
Me
feed I
too.
was checking out. And they were so impressed by the guy and calling out what they really focused on was how he's able to create space in tight quarters and how that's a big evolution of his game from previous. And we probably can point to a few plays that jump off. For example, like when he drives baseline, he has a very good, like he's perfected almost that space where he creates space with his right shoulder. So he
Yeah.
puts like even guys like Sabonis who are like big and strong on his back and is able to finish. That is just like one of the evolutions of OG's game. Like, have you observed anything on your end?
Oh man, I'm glad you brought up that play. There were two plays I wanted to bring up for OG driving. So that was one of them. And it's worth mentioning that's been kind of a problem for him in the past where he extends that shoulder against littler guys. Like if you do that to a guard, they're out the building flying into the stanchion, right? And that's a charge. If you do it against a center, you get away with it. So he creates space against Sabonis in that way, finishes over him. That was amazing. The other play I wanted to point towards is when he drove on Brogdon in the first half. I think maybe even the first quarter. And that time he got his hips by him, and his core was so strong he didn't need to extend anything. He was just strong enough to shift his weight through, carry that momentum onto his left hand for the layup. And so there's multiple ways to create space, and knowing when to just use your hips, knowing when you can use your shoulder, and to create space both times, neither of which is an offensive foul. That's really that next level. So I remember talking to Samson I think at the beginning of last year about sort of what the next step was for OG. And the really popular thing a lot of people were saying was, well, he has to learn to drive, that off the dribble game. And I was saying, I think it's being a big, getting some post moves, becoming a better screener, rebounder. Turns out both is the combination, right? Being a better driver as a big, attacking bigs off the dribble seems to be what he's doing, right? Like that's how he was so good in this game. That was incredible.
I've also noticed he doesn't sacrifice his position to get the shot that he wants. Like you'll see guys somewhat take awkward angles and sacrifice the angle to the hoop or sacrifice the angle the way they release the shot in order to get a clean look. OG almost always has a good center of gravity, so he never is taking shots that are necessarily off balance or awkward or any of those things that make shots go off. Like he, as you said, he has a core strength to kind of maintain his position and go up, and that's something he's worked on, and now he's almost it's almost his physical ability is intersecting with his skill, and now he's putting the two together. And I think this is what that season is about: his physical and his skill coming together to form the embryonic stages of a great player.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you wish he could take off balance shots. It's not that he doesn't, it's that I don't know if he can. He just doesn't have the fluidity to like get to those moves when his balance isn't set, which means he shoots like a great percentage around the rim, even though he's not, a creator for himself, per se. I think adding that off next step actually. So it's funny. I know that may be a slight disagreement. You think it's good he doesn't do it. I would like him to do more of it.
Fair point. Um, we'll talk about our defense a bit, but I just want to get your thoughts on no Siakam, no Lowry, two guys that do demand the ball a lot. Their absence means guys like Fred VanVleet have to step up and do a lot more creative work than they're able to. And that's one of the criticisms of VanVleet has been that he may not be as great of a creator as some of the other guys on the team. And like you look at the assist totals, they're low, but overall, man, I found the offense to run much more democratically than with Lowry and Siakam. Did you observe any differences in how the offense was managed in this game?
I mean, there were some plays, particularly when Fred was off the court, where they just couldn't get anything going, and that's just a talent thing. That's not a huge deal. And there were some plays where Fred was on the court that it sort of ground to a halt, just a couple. But all in all, I mean, he looked to me to be about the same. With Kyle or Pascal beside him or without, he's still going to do his thing. And you're right, only 4 assists. He had a bunch of hockey assists. Norm actually had 6 to Fred's 4. I think a lot of that was just because Fred created, hit the paint, kick out, penetrate, pass, right? That's what my high school coach always said, penetrate, pass. And that second pass is the assist, even though Fred did all the work. So 4 assists is low, but he still did so much job creating space for his teammates. Honestly, now's a good time to bring it up. I'm going to write a long piece about this at some point, but I'm kind of tired of all the criticism of Fred's on-ball game. Like, he's been, if not perfect, very, very good this season on ball. Yeah, there's still a couple plays where he over dribbles, but all in all, he does so much for the team on ball and stuff, as you saw tonight, not a lot of other guys on the team can do. So I just think like the team is lucky to have Fred on ball with his work on ball, and saying, well, he'd be better off ball. Okay, but no one would be better on ball than Fred. And tonight was this afternoon was a great game to prove it. Just like he just deserves flowers for his work so far. The criticism, I think, is kind of silly.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I think last year, maybe that was one of the criticisms of him, how
Definitely
he wasn't able to create. But this year, like, I made the point in the last one of these things that I did, is that like if there was a bunch of homework that players had to do over the off season, Fred has come back and he's 100 for 100. Like he's extended his range.
Yeah.
He's developed a mid-range jumper. He's finishing better at the rim. He's creating more with the ball. Like, if you're talking about a guy you gave big money to, does he improve every year? Man, there can be no complaints about Fred VanVleet.
Those were the things, right? Like when when Glenn Taylor was like, I'll give you all this money, but you have to promise to get better. It's like, okay, Fred's the one who actually did that. Although Andrew Wiggins, great season so far. But yeah, exactly what you said. There was a laundry list of things that Fred was not as good at as the rest of his game. And he's addressed each and every one of them, maybe with the exception of finishing. Statistically, it's about the same as it was last year, even though at times it's been excellent. And yeah, just to me, the dribbling in the middle of that teeth of the defense, creating for teammates from 2-point range. He was a good passer for 3s last year. This year has become a much better passer for 2s. And on top of that, the mid-range game, like those pull-up middies, he just didn't have last year. He shot like under 30% or something horrible, outside of the paint and inside of the arc. And I hit on that a lot last year. And he's been incredible this year, right? That's the Kawhi shot that you need in the playoffs when everything else bogs down. Can you get something that's maybe a point, a possession, right? Miss it half the time, make it half the time. And he's done that, that's the mark of, a tier 1 superstar, is having that unassisted self-creation. And not that Fred is there, but that is a hallmark of the game. And he has taken to that so far this year.
Jordan's post-baseball career was entirely built on the mid-range game. Like
yes.
he reinvented that game when he came back from baseball, and that became the shot that people worked on. And a lot of the guards in those in that era started developing mid-range games because of Jordan. And Richmond was there, Kobe was there, but that was the primary source of offense in clutch time. And as the game evolves and people play the 3-point shot more, people defend it more. Defenses focus more on the 3-point shot. And when you focus on something's got to give. Something always has to give. And lately we've seen, and not just with Fred and the Raptors, but overall in the league, you see guys stepping in more and more to take that quote unquote inefficient long two. It's not the 21-foot two. It's more like the 18, 17-foot two,
Yeah.
which I think that makes obviously a massive difference. The 21-foot two is the Andrea Bargnani two. Like we don't want those. We want the Fred VanVleet 17, 18-foot. And as you said, man, I think that has really opened up a lot of the other offense for him as well.
Yeah, analytically, there's a huge like analytics don't hate a short mid-range shot. They only hate the long mid-range shot.
Let's talk about defense. Some guys are raising it in the chat. I mean, obviously, whenever you talk about defense, I sort of start with Chris Boucher, and I know OG, great defensive game, ton of steals. Like how many did he have today? I think he had 5 steals. But Boucher's presence at the rim, and also I'll bundle in Baines as well today, because that guy got off his feet as well to block a couple of shots. And initially, after Sabonis was causing a little bit of problems for them early on, not too much. Brogdon was a bit of an issue. After that, I thought the Raptors completely, pretty much owned defensively the paint, and the Pacers were not really able to get any clean looks. And when they got clean looks in the paint, they were contested. So overall, our interior defense, which has been a bit of a problem all year at the rim with guys getting dribble penetration, nobody being there to stop it, that was significantly improved today.
Oh, 100% agreed. I want to, like we did with OG, there's a couple plays I wanted to look at. Mostly Fred, actually. I'm such a huge Fred fan. But, okay, that stop at the end of the game. He gets Brogdon drives. It's a 3-point game. And Fred just stonewalls him cold. The guy is so strong, like his lower body, just you can't move him like Kyle. And then he just takes the ball, like that's Kawhi Leonard defense. That is just unreal defense. And the other play I wanted to look at, that is physical ability, which is, Fred has. Like people say he's not an athlete. The guy is a freak athlete, just not an explosive leaper. It's the strength of his hands, the strength of his hips, the strength of his arms. The other thing I wanted to look at for Fred was his mind. And there was one play that was just so cool. And it's something that a lot of Raptors can do. It's not just a unique to Fred thing, but they had their sort of cascading X outs. This was, I think, in the third quarter. And I think Yuta rotated away to the far corner, took away a shot. Maybe Stan or OG out to the wing, and the ball kept on swinging. And it ended up with Fred in a 2-on-1 situation. Elbow extended and in the corner. And Fred had this unbelievable moment where he stunted at the guy on the elbow extended. Just for a moment, he saw the pass, just the momentum of the body going towards the pass. Before it was even released, he recovered to the corner. So, when you have that cascading X out rotation, if the offense plays it properly, you're going to create a 2-on-1 from behind the arc because the ball's faster than people's feet. And Fred just did this brilliant play where he held up the ball for just that fraction of a second until all the other defenders could rotate. And then they were back into, man defense. Everyone had switched through these rotations, and the Pacers were forced to miss this really tough contested 3 at the end of the clock. It's things like that we're missing at the start of the year. That team defense where everyone is supporting everyone. And it's those instantaneous decisions that allow your, selling out. I know you've hit on the those sellout closeouts where you fly past into the first row. If you do that, someone like Fred needs to step up, make those plays to let you back into the game. That was missing, and now it's back. And that's a huge part of why the defense is so good now.
Yeah. And I think you raised an excellent point, which I have to agree on, is that you only need to disrupt the defense on the perimeter for like a fraction of a second for the offense to completely not be able to generate that 2-on-1 you're referring to. And the Raptors, I find, have been over anxious or a little too eager on the perimeter, and they so let me put it this way. The defense knows how to the offense for the other team knows how to handle what the Raptors are about to do, whether it be a closeout, before it actually happens, which allows them to generate that 2-on-1 or clean look. If the Raptors are able to delay that, as you said, like they did today and not just Fred, like Watanabe had a couple of plays who did that, OG had, and I think that was Watanabe's main contribution, was his length allows for that to happen. And And that makes that's the difference between a top third defense and a bottom third defense. Really, that little nuance right there.
People don't understand how tight the margins are in the NBA.
Yeah.
The difference between an open shot and a contested shot is not feet like it says in the stats page. It's actually inches. It's that fraction of a second where a teammate holds up for another guy. It's just the NBA, because they're so fast and big, those margins are tiny. And just like you say, man, when you steal enough margins, that's the difference between a good and bad defensive team. That's all it is. By the way, as long as we're talking about the defense, how about that Boucher and then Stanley Johnson twin block on Sabonis in the last possession of the game? Like, that was Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, right? The double block.
That was the only thing that I posted today on Twitter. And man, was it a double block? I think there's 2 blocks there, right?
Yeah, it was 2. Yeah, it was slightly different, right? It was Sabonis got blocked, caught it, went up again, yeah, slightly different. But oh my God, right?
Every time that block happens, every time any double block happens at the rim, I always go back and, man, I go way back. I go to Charles Smith, Knicks, Bulls at Madison Square Garden when the Knicks were down 1 and Charles Smith had the ball underneath the rim and got blocked by Scottie Pippen like 4 times and Horace Grant. And Marv Albert had a classic call. So in my mind, when that was happening, my mind went back to that game in 1995, I want to say, or something, even before that, I think. So yeah, I mean, I love to see big man defense to win the game, and that was that was the ultimate for me there.
Man, Sabonis finished with what, 10 points, right?
Sabonis, hey, we got a box score in front of us, man.
Yeah, 10 points, 1 for 10 from the field.
Yeah, 1 for 10
like,
from the field.
Oh my, that's what Toronto did last year.
19 boards, though. Holy crap. Yeah.
Yeah, he still had a pretty good game. Like, if you're gonna play great defense and force a ton of misses, there's all those extra opportunities for offensive rebounds. That's just how it works.
Yeah, but, I mean, some people are pointing out, Boucher's defense there, and we started off this segment with talking about Boucher, but we never actually got to him.
Let's do it.
So let me start with Baines first of all. Let's give Baines some credit. Okay. Let's because Boucher gets credit every game. Let's give Baines a little bit of credit. Last few games, he's been much better. In this game, he actually left his feet and got a block on a guard on a rainbow.
Yeah.
Did you see that? I mean,
that was a nice block.
It was like he blocked it cleanly, and not just with the tip of his fingers. It was he got some palm in there. Maybe at least some of the longer part of his fingers. So credit to him. His box outs have been a lot better. What did he end up with today?
7 rebounds.
7 rebounds. Not bad by any means. And he's progressed well. Any reason that you see he's doing better, or like what's anything he's doing differently to do better?
It's just, the scheme is impossible to learn. And the center position, I think, is the hardest position in the scheme because you are unique. The other 4 are almost interchangeable, and the center isn't. And the Raptors just didn't have a guy who could do that, which is why they were switching so much more to start the year on defense. And Baines has sort of walked into the role a little bit better. His rotations have still been slow, but you don't want the center in rotation as often. Like, if you have to, get them out there. But preferably they lurk around the net. They contest without leaving their feet so they can still block out for the rebound. All these things. And he's been doing that. Like, you saw it in the Miami games against Bam. He was almost ignoring the ball handler to a fault, where he just let Kendrick Nunn waltz in and just keep his body on Bam the whole time, which, yeah, Bam's a bigger threat, but they're all NBA players. And if you don't step up to a guy, they're just going to make the layup. And he didn't do that nearly as much this game. He was much better at half committing to Brogdon, where he takes Brogdon away without keeping his body away from the center so he can recover. Like, he was fantastic defensively, which maybe for the first game, he was good against Miami. He was fantastic tonight. And I know that they still didn't win his minutes. He was just a +2. That's kind of what you're going to get. Toronto right now is going to win their transition minutes. 4 starters, 2 starters. Their starting minutes, if they win them by 2, that's a win. It's not something you're going to blow the guys out like they did last year with Marc Gasol, but +2, you got to take that. Baines is now what the Raptors wanted from him.
Yeah, I'd say what I have noticed a little bit different about Baines is that he early on in the season we put him in situations where he was almost trapping guards a little too further out from his comfort zone, like beyond the 3-point line. We saw him in
Yeah.
some traps, and he struggles recovering just because, as you said, like it's a unique position. He's a bigger guy. We can't ask him to do things that maybe we asked Ibaka to do with his strides and his length. So he's definitely sagging back a lot more on the pick and roll, and he's doing a better job of deciding where to go between the ball handler and his man. And by being closer to the rim, the area that he obviously has to cover when making that decision is smaller, and his decisions are easier. So I think it's a combination of a lot of factors, that being one of them. I think definitely he's fouling less. His defensive rebounding has improved. I think you don't see too many instances where he's giving up a board despite having position. Like that was really odd.
That was a problem in the start of the year.
You know, so now I think he's improved there. Boucher.
Okay.
So I'll focus actually on the offensive side. What I like about the guy is that he's an always available pick and roll option or a pick and pop option. And what I mean, there's one thing to start your play with, 18, 19 seconds off the clock as your primary action on the play. But when that play kind of breaks down and the guard gets the ball back, like Malachi Flynn had this one play, you can still run a secondary action with like the second play on the same possession with Boucher, because he's very quick to reset, and he doesn't need to be in a particular position on the floor to run a pick and roll. He's not a guy who needs to be in this area. Like the at least 2 or 3 plays we run on the like a side pick and roll, almost at the baseline, where Flynn drove in from the wing, used his screen, and Boucher went on the baseline, and Flynn found him. So him being available almost at any time to run a 2-man game is one of the reasons that he's so effective.
And I mean, I absolutely agree. I don't have a ton to add to that. I mean, you know who else was amazing at that? Serge Ibaka, right? Like that's a skill the Raptors need, because their guards, the size disadvantage they have, aren't always able to get a shot up at every moment. When you're 6'7", you can always get a shot at the rim. That's just life when you're that tall. When you're 6'0", you need to have an outlet. And that's what made Serge Ibaka so good on offense, among other things. And that's part of what makes Boucher so good as well. So if you took the offense, I'm assuming that means I need to take the defense, right?
I mean, I don't know how this works.
I mean, he was like, that was his only, no, he had 2 blocks. I can't quite remember the other one other than the game-saving one. I mean, that'll blot out all the rest from your memory. But
I think it's the constant. His length poses so many problems in general that it's almost, when he's not on the court, the Raptors have to worry about that length not being there. Like it's almost like he adds rim protection to the defense, which is otherwise not there if he's not there. I think the Raptors on defense can afford to take some chances on the perimeter when he's in the game, and when he's not, you have to look out for. You can basically afford to give up dribble penetration a little bit more when he's in the game.
Yeah, so he's always been able to get those spectacular weak side blocks. What he's getting better at is not going for them on every shot. Like in the first quarter, he had that obvious goaltend where he pinned a shot that was well off the backboard. And then he didn't do anything like that again, to my eyes, for the rest of the game. His awareness of when to sell out for a block and when to stay in rebounding position, which was not wonderful last year, is slowly improving. Like if you have that spectacular, the baseline is what you need to bring up and up and up. And that's what he's been doing slowly. And that's why he's so good at defense, not because of those spectacular plays, but because of the solid plays. Because you have maybe 5 chances to be spectacular all game, maybe 10. You have like 1,000 chances to be solid. And if you miss on half of those, that matters so much more. When you hit on 70, 80% of those chances to be solid, that's what makes an incredible defender.
And I was looking at the box score here, and you always see this theme with Nurse just tinkering and trying different lineups. We saw Malachi Flynn come in at that end of the third quarter and pretty much give the lead back. The Raptors offense probably looked the worst in that little stretch with Fred gone off the off the bench. But sticking with the bench idea, Davis came in a little bit, didn't really play much, had his one turnover. This is what I remember. But Bembry, like out of the blue, 20 minutes. Nick Nurse really just tinkering and trying different things and seeing what his players have to offer. And Bembry got 20 minutes today. I don't know what impression he made on you overall, but talk about Nurse's just constant tinkering and trying to find combinations that work.
Yeah, that's what you need, right? Like when you don't have something that works, is it easier to fix it or is it easier to just find something else that works, right? Like Toronto's rotations were a mess to start the year. It just wasn't working at all. And to Nurse's credit, he's been dabbling with things that, I mean, a lot of he can't expect to work. Like a lot of these things, you know, when you throw Norm and Terrence Davis and Stanley Johnson out there at the same time, some of the decision making on offense, on the drive especially, it's too much unexpectedness, too much chaos. It's not going to work. But you have to try it. Because if you hadn't tried all that stuff earlier in the year, Stanley Johnson wouldn't have cemented himself as such a solid guy in the rotation now. And that's the same thing with Yuta Watanabe and DeAndre Bembry now, right? Like those guys have not been fixtures in the rotation, but getting them different minutes with different lineups, see where they work best, see what fits best. Because maybe one of those two guys, I love Yuta personally, one of those two guys could end up in the rotation later. So absolutely, I agree that tinkering is huge for Toronto. To be able to win while you tinker is, I mean, that's fantastic because you're doing stuff that you know is not optimizing your 48 minutes, but it's to optimize the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this was probably the most enjoyable Raptor game that I have seen this year. I mean, the Golden State game was pretty fun to watch overall. Some of the West Coast games were okay, but other than that, I think this one was very, very team oriented. The Raptors held their own on the glass. High assists, where they had 24, they out assisted Indiana. So it was just overall a good team win, and one that I certainly I feel better about this win than I did about the Miami win. But let me ask you this question that's come up a few times, and the Raptors' tendency to give up leads, and I think that they've blown like a double-digit lead many times. Yeah. How much do we read into that? Because so much of the NBA these days is like a 15-point lead doesn't really mean anything anymore. Like it used to be like you had a 16-point game and it was ball game. Like that was it. You're done. You're trailing the rest of the game, and the second half may as well be a bit of a write-off because you were up by 16. Now it doesn't seem to matter. Are we over-indexing or over-analyzing the stat that the Raptors give up big leads?
No, it's a really important stat. I have a piece coming out early next week with another outlet about this. Really exciting one. But I mean, I'll leak some of it. The reason why they're giving up so many leads is because they build them in such high variance ways. Like this game, Toronto shot better from 3 than they did from 2. They shot 42.9% from deep and 41% from the field, which means better from 3 than from 2. So what you're doing is you're building your lead off of a really high variance shot. And yeah, they're creating really good threes. So it's good that they're making them. But if you can't create good 2s, which are a low variance shot, you should be making 2s at a higher rate. If you can't create good layups, then you can't hold the lead when that cold streak comes around, right? That's the nature of variance. When it swings up, you make a big lead. When it swings down, you let a team back in. And so if you can't create those easy 2s, then you'll never be able to hold that lead. So yeah, the Toronto's over-reliance on 3 points is why they're letting teams back into the game. I think of 9 losses, 6 they've led by double figures, and of 3 or 4 wins, they've led by huge margins and let the team back in. So it's been a ton of it, and that's why. It's just the team's offensive balance is stilted right now.
Analyze Flynn for me a little bit. I think at this point we've seen him in different situations. He got a slightly extended run to start the season, maybe, and now he saw him as backup to Fred today. He struggled in some areas. Obviously he created much more easily in preseason than he does in the regular season. Where do you see him right now? What's the best fit for him? Is he headed to the G League, you feel, or is he going to stay with the big club? What do you think is best for his development right now?
I think what he's doing right now, I'm a tiny bit disappointed in Flynn's production. Uh, I mean, he's made some good decisions, but I expected him to be a net positive, and he hasn't been. He's missing from the field, missing from deep. That's normal stuff. You miss shots as a rookie. His defense has been solid. His passing has been solid. I thought he'd be a little bit more of a spark. And no, I mean, I wrote he has star potential. That's 5 years down the line. Obviously, I didn't think he was going to come in and have huge production this season. I thought he'd have a little more than what he's giving. The problem, I think, to me, has just been pressing a little bit too much. I'm sure you would see a similar thing where he's either trying to do too much by himself and taking tough mid-rangers, or he is not taking open layups he has. And finding that balance is the hardest thing in the world when you're adjusting to a game that's so much faster than what you're used to. So it makes sense. It's not unexpected. Still, it's a little disappointing, right? What do you think? Is that similar to your take?
I feel he's putting too much pressure on himself to score. I feel like he's whenever he has the ball and he's getting a screen is being set for him, he almost feels like he needs to create his own offense there rather than create. And maybe that's stemming from his preseason performances where he had a fairly easy time scoring and getting on the break and he got some points. And maybe he's wondering why that's not happening in the regular season. And maybe I obviously have zero idea. That's a question to ask Nurse in your whatever conferences.
Which I'm skipping for this, by the way.
I think you made a good decision there. So I do feel he's putting too much pressure on himself, but I think he's a project, right? And at this point, like if you ask me, is the G League or his current role better for him? I think I'll just say his current role, because even if he gets like whatever 7-8 minutes a game in these situations, I think that he gets enough exposure against great defenses that he finds him. Ideally, I think you would love to see him hover around maybe 12 to 15 minutes a game, so that he gets more exposure to NBA defenses. I'm not sure 7 minutes. 7 minutes is too stop and start to really get something from the game. So I think I'd like to see him, especially given this being a development year, I'd like to see him around 15 or so to really make the most of his big club stint.
I agree. Like, what's he going to get from the G League? The guy is so skilled already. It's not like he's going to work on his skills. He's so smart. He knows what defenses are throwing at him. What he needs is to adjust to the physicality of the NBA game. Yeah, the G League is a step up from the NCAA, physical wise, but it's different from the NBA. So I don't think the G League is going to get you used to the NBA physicality. I think he has to be there because the way he got his shots in the NCAA was actually a lot of, tough self-created threes and a lot of open mid-rangers and layups. He took a ton of floaters, pull-ups, good at getting open at the rim, and he just hasn't been able to do that. His mid-rangers have been well contested. His layups have by and large been almost blocked out by guys being so athletic around the rim. And so he just needs to learn how to get those shots. I don't think he's going to do that in the G League. I think he knows how to get his shots in the G League.
Let's end off on a couple of audience questions. So one of them is, what's up with Paul Watson? He's not getting much playing time. 6'7" guy, can obviously shoot the ball. Any reason why he's not getting any run in this current rotation?
That's a good question. I think he could probably give the team something, but it's a minutes game, right? Matt Thomas, the same thing. He got 53 seconds. They've both been just guys outside of the bubble right now. We talked earlier about mixing and matching, seeing what works. And I guess when you're trying to find what works, you don't want to give everyone 7 minutes of run, right? Because Yuta and DeAndre both got 20 minutes of run. If you cut those down by 10 each, then you can give Paul Watson and Matt Thomas 10 minutes each. But what are you really seeing from those guys if they all get 10 minutes? Same thing you said, right? 2 stop and start for Malachi. So, he's experimenting. He's seeing what works, but you can't do that for everyone because then you're not giving people a real chance with their opportunity. So maybe it'll come, but right now, Paul Watson's not the guy that Nick Nurse is looking at in terms of what can we get from this person.
Yeah, and I'd say if Paul Watson has to play, so I'll make both sides of the argument. So if Paul Watson has to play, it comes probably at the expense of guys like Watanabe.
Yeah.
right? And Watanabe's, whenever he does come in, he's been very effective. So I can see why Nick Nurse would prefer one over the other. But on the flip side of the coin is that everybody seems to be getting their chance except Matt Thomas. So it's a bit surprising to see Paul Watson, who has been somewhat highly touted, and everybody, I don't follow the 905 as deeply as some people, but whoever I talk to really seem to like the guy and think highly of him. So, and given that everybody's getting a chance, it's a little surprising that he's not getting any sort of chance. Even in garbage time, he barely gets in, right? So it's a bit perplexing.
Yeah. I mean, garbage time, what are you really trying to find out anyway? Like, I just think if Paul Watson gets his chance, it will be down the road. Right now, he's looking, what does Stanley Johnson bring? We found out. What does Yuta Watanabe bring? That's what we're trying to find out now. What does DeAndre Bembry bring? That was this game, right? Maybe Paul Watson gets his game, but you can't do them all at once.
Yeah, I hear you. And one more question was, what made Fred so effective against Brogdon today? And you can't just answer Fred is an elite defender, damn it.
Well, he's just better than Brogdon, right? Maybe. I don't know. Well, what makes him better? He is a better defender than Brogdon is an offensive player. So, yeah, Brogdon missed some shots. That's life, but Brogdon is a very good player. Fred is an elite one-on-one defender. So he made life tough, and Brogdon missed tough shots. That happens. On the other end, Fred's threes were not easy. It's not like Fred had an easy offensive game, He hit 2, I think, from like 5 or 6 behind the line. He hit 1 tough contested pull-up 3 in transition. Like, he was not getting easy shots. He and Brogdon probably had similar tough looks, and Fred hit them. That's life in the NBA. I think if you play this game 10 more times, we get it once more, maybe Brogdon hits them and Fred doesn't. Like, that's just the reality of high variance in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. I think Watson will get his chance later on in the season just because everybody seems to be getting their chance. And I think it's just a matter of time. And right now the Raptors are in a bit of a rhythm. I can see why Nurse would want to maybe solidify some of these rotations a little bit, just so he gets a lot of value out of them. So I think he will get his chance. When Matt Thomas gets his chance, I'm not 100% sure. So let's anything else that caught your eye in this game, man, before we sign off? Any particular revelations or any particular insights that you got out of this one?
Man, the Matt Thomas conspiracy runs deeper. The one possession, not really. The run possession he got in, he was wide open and uncontested for a 3, and Yuta traveled rather than give it to him. Yuta had a wide open swing, the guy who always passes to an uncontested teammate, and he chose to travel rather than pass the ball to Matt Thomas. And that was Matt Thomas's only offensive possession. So I don't know, man. If he can't even get looks from teammates when he's wide open, I don't know what's going on.
I also noticed how there was this one play where Watanabe, I think it was Fred who fed Watanabe near the rim, and he missed a reverse layup. And you could see him walking back up the court, really upset at himself. Like he almost hit his head, what the hell? How did I miss that layup? And I love that. And I love the fact that guys know that they're in there for a little bit of time, and in those minutes they got to be tight because there are guys waiting on the bench, and the coach has shown that he will yank you and give somebody else time just because he seems to be running this like a democratic country. So I love that idea that guys are feeling that pressure that they need to produce. And sometimes you can argue that, oh man, you're looking over your shoulder for the hook, but it hasn't seemed to affect how these guys play. They just when they are in there, they're really focused.
Yeah. Do you remember? Because they say, you short memory, right? Forget after you screw up. Do you remember how Yuta played defense on the next possession down after missing the layup?
I don't recall.
That's putting you on the spot.
But enlighten me.
No, I don't. I just because, you say have a short memory, so you're not supposed to get upset at yourself. And so if he was getting upset at himself, I'm just wondering if his defense was affected or not. I remember the layup. It was in the beginning of the fourth quarter that he missed it, the reverse. I don't remember his defense after, but that's something that's worth checking, whether him being pissed at himself impacted his play or whether he forgot immediately after being so mad at himself.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll find.
With Utah, having watched this game just on just once, maybe I mean, catch some highlights later. But with Utah, what I do observe pretty consistently is that he is excellent at forcing his man into the area where he wants them to go. Like even if he's conceding some sort of penetration, his angles are played in a way where the guy's going where there's defense. Like he does a good job of like funneling people into the defense rather than getting crossed over and the guy going the wrong way and breaking everything up. So that has to do with his length, his positioning, how he, even his stance when he's like buckled down at the perimeter and he's like basically your defensive stance is very effective and caters to the defense's strengths.
He plays defense. You know who he reminds me of is Anthony Parker. He's just always there. He's just like, he doesn't screw up. He's always there. The angle he takes is right. The guy always does what the defender wants them to do. And it's not because of like, oh, gee, you look at him. It's like, oh, this guy's an incredible athlete because he's endlessly long and the strongest dude ever and like gigantic. You know, Yuta Watanabe, you look at him and you play defense. You're like, well, how? It's the same as Anthony Parker. He's just always doing the correct thing.
Probably talk forever, but I think we gotta call this a show at this point. I don't know how long's it been, because we gotta prepare for the Bills and Chiefs a little bit later on.
Yeah, or I just have to write about the game we just saw.
Oh yeah, I mean, just take a transcript of this talk and you're done.
Yeah, slap it down. There's your gamer.
Louis, man, thanks for coming on. Follow Louis at Louis Zatzman, Twitter, blah blah blah. And we'll see you guys soon. And thank you for everybody for joining the live chat and your comments and all that stuff.